Leopard held the quarry rim the way stone holds heat after sunset, quietly, without showing effort, as if the place had been his long before people cut it open. The quarry sat above the village like a wound that never fully closed. Decades ago, men had blasted rock from the hillside and hauled it away for roads and buildings, leaving a wide bowl of broken ledges and pale scree slopes that gleamed in harsh light. When the trucks stopped coming, the quarry filled with weeds and wind. Rainwater gathered in pockets. A shallow pond formed at the lowest point, greenish in summer, steel grey in winter. Goats liked it because it was open and you could see danger coming. That was the old logic. This week the goats wouldn't drink. Ramesh Purohit learned it the slow way, by watching them do everything except the one thing he needed. He led his herd down the dusty track at dawn, the same path he'd walked since he was a boy, his crook tapping stones, his sandals slapping dry earth. The goats flowed around him in their usual restless patterns, noses to the ground, quick hops on rocks, small arguments, and sudden peace. They always argued at the quarry edge. They always pushed to get down to water. They always drank like they hadn't seen water in days even when they had. But this morning, at the rim, the herd stopped like it had hit an invisible fence. The first doe stepped forward, ears rotating, head high. She stared down the slope toward the pond, took 2 steps, and froze. A second goat bumped her flank, impatient, then stiffened too. Within seconds the whole herd bunched near Ramesh, bodies pressed close as if closeness could make them safer. Ramesh frowned and scanned the bowl. He saw the water, smooth and dull. He saw the tall grass along its edge moving in a lazy wind. He saw crows on a ledge picking at something old and dry, nothing else. "Go," he muttered, flicking his crook gently at a stubborn kid. The kid didn't move. It bleated once, high and thin, then tucked itself behind an older goat. Ramesh felt the hair on his forearms rise. The reaction wasn't to the bleat. It was to the silence that followed, because the quarry usually carried sound. Stone, birds, goat hooves, the distant clatter of a tractor. Today the quarry held everything tight. He took a step toward the slope and stopped. A smell rose on the air, faint but unmistakable to anyone who lived near wild country. Cat. It wasn't the sharp ammonia of a house cat's litter. It was musk and dust and a faint iron edge like warm fur over old blood. It drifted from above, not from below. Ramesh lifted his chin and looked at the rim on the far side, where the quarry wall rose in a jagged line. The morning sun struck the highest ledges first. Shadows clung to crevices. And then, as his eyes adjusted, he saw what he'd missed because his mind didn't want to see it. A shape on a pale rock shelf near the top. Low still, the colour of dried grass and stone. Not a rock, not a shadow, a leopard. It lay with forelegs folded, head upright, tail draped along the ledge like a loose rope. Its ears twitched once, and in that tiny movement, Ramesh felt the whole world tilt. The cat was not hiding. It was not slinking. It was simply there, occupying the rim like it had decided the quarry belonged to it for the morning. Ramesh didn't breathe for a moment. He counted stupidly in his head. 1, 2, 3, waiting for the leopard to move, to prove itself real. It didn't move. It watched. The goats pressed tighter around Ramesh. One of the older bucks stamped once, a hollow sound against stone, and then went still again. The herd's fear was physical. You could see it in their rigid necks, in the way their nostrils flared without stepping forward, in the way even the bold ones refused the slope. Ramesh backed away a single step. He didn't run. Running turned you into prey in your own mind, and fear made people do foolish things. But he didn't advance either. He knew leopards, not from books. He'd never read a wildlife book in his life, but from the way people talked in the evenings, from the occasional missing dog, from the one time years ago when a leopard had taken a goat from the edge of a wedding crowd and vanished so fast the men with sticks looked like they were moving underwater. Leopards were not like tigers. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't crush cane and roar. They slipped through kitchens and courtyards like smoke, and they didn't need much cover to do it. Ramesh kept his eyes on the cat and raised his crook. Not as a threat, as a shape, a statement. He made himself taller. The leopard's gaze didn't change. A crow cawed once, harsh and brave. Ramesh turned his head slightly and called, low but urgent, "Shankar!" Shankar was his nephew, 14, skinny as a reed and always somewhere nearby when goats were involved. The boy had been collecting stray kids near a thorn bush behind the rim. "What?" Shankar called, annoyed, like an ordinary morning still existed. Ramesh didn't take his eyes off the ledge. "Come back," he said, quietly. Shankar appeared, then stopped when he saw the herd bunched like a storm cloud. "What happened?" he asked, stepping closer. "Look," Ramesh said, and finally allowed himself to point. Shankar followed the line of the crook and saw the leopard. His face drained of colour so fast it was almost comic, except nothing about it was funny. It's right there," he whispered. "Yes," Ramesh said. "So we go." "But the water," Shankar began. Ramesh cut him off. "We don't argue with a leopard," he said. "We go." He began to turn the herd away from the quarry rim with slow pressure and soft clicks of his tongue. The goats resisted at first out of confusion, then yielded quickly out of relief. They did not want to go down into the bowl. They wanted to leave. Ramesh kept the herd moving along the path back toward the scrub. He didn't look back until the rim was partly hidden by acacia and boulders. When he did, the leopard was still on the ledge, not stalking, not fleeing, holding. By the time Ramesh reached the village, the sun was higher and people were moving through their routines. Women sweeping yards, men pulling water from the pump, kids dragging school bags like weights. The normal noise of life felt like something fragile. Ramesh walked straight to the small shop where the village phone hung on a nail and the owner charged 2 rupees to make calls. The shopkeeper, Salim, looked up. "You're early," Salim said. Ramesh didn't waste words. "Leopard," he said. "At the quarry." Salim's eyebrows rose, then knitted. "Again?" "On the rim," Ramesh said. "Goats won't drink." A couple of men inside the shop, drinking tea, arguing about fertilizer prices, fell silent. "Are you sure?" one asked automatically, because denial was how people tried to keep their day intact. Ramesh stared at him. "Would I leave water for fun?" he said. Salim reached for the phone. "Forest," he said, already dialing. Ramesh waited, hands still shaking slightly even though the danger wasn't near him anymore. Fear didn't stop when you were safe, it stopped when your body decided you were safe, and bodies were slow learners. When Salim connected, he spoke quickly in clipped phrases. Ramesh caught only pieces. Quarry, leopard, goats, close to village, children. He hung up and looked at Ramesh. "They say someone will come," he said. "Today?" Ramesh asked. Salim shrugged, helpless in the way small villages were helpless when decisions came from offices far away. "They said soon," he replied. "Soon doesn't water goats," Ramesh muttered. The men in the shop began talking over each other again, and the talk turned sharp fast. Everyone had a story. Everyone had a solution that involved someone else's risk. "Put firecrackers," one man said. "Shoot it," another said, as if guns grew on trees. "It will take a child," an older man said, voice trembling. Ramesh hated that sentence because it acted like tragedy was a scheduled event rather than a risk that could be managed. "Keep children away from the quarry," he said. "That's what we do now." They nodded, but nodding was cheap. By late morning, word had spread anyway. It spread faster than any ranger truck could. Mothers called children inside, school let out early. Men carried sticks they'd carried for their grandfather's fears. Someone climbed a rooftop with binoculars and looked toward the quarry rim as if staring long enough could make the cat disappear. The quarry sat quiet. The goats stood in their pen and bleated at the empty trough. Ramesh's wife, Sita, came out with a bucket and looked at the goats with tight lips. "They'll get sick," she said. Ramesh rubbed his face with his hand, feeling dust and sweat. "We'll bring water from the pump," he said. "That is not enough for all," she replied. "I know." Sita leaned closer. "Where did you see it?" "On the high ledge," he said. "In sun." "Why would it sit there?" she asked. Ramesh didn't have a good answer. He had only guesses, and guesses made fear larger. Maybe it had made a kill in the quarry bowl and was guarding it. Maybe it had been pushed down from the ridge by dogs or men, or another leopard. Maybe it had found the quarry was a perfect ambush point for goats and didn't want to give it up. Or maybe, Ramesh thought darkly, it was simply comfortable. At noon, a white government jeep finally rattled into the village, tires chewing dust. 2 men got out, 1 young ranger with a rifle case and a radio clipped to his chest, and 1 older officer with a notebook and a face that didn't offer kindness easily because kindness made people argue more. The older man introduced himself as Inspector Verma from the Forest Department. The younger ranger, AJ, nodded once and kept scanning rooftops like he expected someone to throw a stone at him for being late. Verma listened to Ramesh's account without interrupting, jotting notes. "Time?" he asked. "Morning," Ramesh said. "Just after sunrise." "Exact ledge?" Ramesh pointed. "There," he said, gesturing toward the quarry's far rim. Verma looked, then turned to Ajay. "We go see," he said. A small crowd gathered immediately because people always wanted to witness danger from a safe distance. Verma turned and snapped, "No crowd," and the authority in his voice actually worked for a moment. The crowd held back, grumbling. Ramesh followed anyway because it was his goats, his water, his problem. Verma didn't tell him to stop, but AJ glanced at him as if measuring whether he would become another liability. They approached the quarry along the path Ramesh had taken earlier. The sun was higher now, baking the exposed rock. Heat shimmered above pale stone. The quarry bowl looked empty from above. The goats weren't there now, which made the place feel even more abandoned. Verma stood at the rim and scanned with binoculars. AJ kept his hand near the rifle case but didn't open it yet. There was no point, not unless they had a clean shot, and the Forest Department didn't like firing in villages unless forced. Ramesh's eyes went to the ledge. Nothing. His stomach tightened. "It's gone," he said. Verma didn't answer. He kept scanning. AJ crouched and examined the dust near the rim path. He pointed at a set of tracks in a patch of fine gravel, rounder than dog, with faint claw marks absent. Cat. "Leopard," AJ said quietly. "Recent." Verma nodded and stepped back from the rim, then walked along it slowly, reading the rock like it could speak. He stopped at a place where scrub grew close to the edge, the branches twisted and low. Beneath the scrub, there was a depression in the dust, and a few pale hairs stuck to a thorn. Verma's face tightened. "It rested here," he said. Ramesh looked down into the quarry bowl. "Then where is it now?" Verma finally looked at him. "Close," he said. "Leopards don't leave a good place quickly." AJ adjusted his radio, listening. "No signal in the bowl," he muttered. Verma's jaw clenched. "Of course," he said. Then to Ramesh, "Any dogs missing?" Ramesh hesitated. 2 nights ago, Salim's dog didn't come back," he said. "And last week, a goat kid. We thought it was Jackal." Verma's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "Not Jackal," he said. They moved carefully along the rim to a point where a narrow goat trail descended into the quarry bowl. Verma stopped. At the trail's edge, the dust was disturbed. Something had slid down recently, dragging loose stones. AJ crouched. "See?" he whispered. Ramesh leaned in and saw the marks. A shallow groove, the kind left by a body pulled or pushed, and alongside it, faint cat tracks. Verma exhaled through his nose. "It made a kill," he said. Ramesh felt nausea rise. He didn't want to see what the quarry held, but his mind filled it anyway. A dog dragged down, a goat kid, something eaten in the shade where no one heard. "Will you take it?" Ramesh asked, voice tight. Verma looked at the bowl. "We will try to locate and tranquilize," he said. "But this is not a simple place. Too many ledges, too many blind corners. If it runs, it can vanish into the scrub behind the quarry and be in someone's courtyard by night." Ramesh's mouth went dry. "So what do we do?" Verma's answer was blunt. "We reduce opportunities," he said. "No goats near quarry, no dogs roaming. Keep livestock locked at night. Keep children away from rim and scrub." "And water?" Ramesh asked. "My goats need water." Verma glanced at the quarry pond, then at the village below. "Bring water," he said. Ramesh stared at him. "From where?" he demanded, anger finally punching through fear. "From the pump? For 40 goats? You think my back is a tanker?" Verma's gaze held his, steady and not unkind, just tired. "You want me to promise the leopard will leave," he said. "I cannot. I can only tell you what keeps your goats alive today." Ramesh swallowed the anger, because anger didn't change physics. The quarry pond was the easiest water. That was why it mattered. That was why the leopard had chosen it. AJ's radio crackled faintly, just a breath of static. He shifted position, tried again. Nothing. Verma looked up toward the scrub ridge behind the quarry. "We set cameras," he said. "We set a cage trap if needed. But first we confirm where it's bedding. It might still be in the bowl." He turned to AJ. "You go no lower than that ledge," he said, indicating a mid-level shelf that could be reached with careful footing. "You do not go down to the pond. If it's there, it will come up behind you." Ajay nodded, face tight. Verma turned to Ramesh and finally used a softer tone, because yelling didn't make hard news easier. "You did right," he said. "You saw it and you pulled the goats back. If you had pushed them down..." Ramesh didn't let him finish. He didn't want to hear the image. They split their focus. AJ descended to the mid-level shelf slowly, stepping on rock like it might break. Verma stayed on the rim with binoculars and radio. Ramesh waited back from the edge, watching both the quarry bowl and the scrub ridge behind it, because he suddenly understood that danger could come from any direction. Minutes passed. Heat built. The air smelled of stone and dry grass. Then a sound rose from below, a sharp, frantic bleat. Not from his herd was in the village, but from somewhere in the quarry bowl. Ramesh's skin prickled. Verma's posture snapped upright. RJ froze on the shelf, eyes wide, listening. The bleat came again, then cut off abruptly as if a hand had clamped over a mouth. Verma's voice dropped. "That's a goat," he said. Ramesh's stomach dropped. "Whose?" he whispered. Verma didn't answer, because the answer was obvious and horrible. Someone else had brought goats to the quarry despite the warning, or a stray had wandered down, or a tether had broken. In villages, rules were spoken and ignored all the time. Verma grabbed his radio and tried again. Still dead. He scanned the bowl with binoculars and saw movement at the pond edge. Grass parting, a pale shape low to the ground. For a fraction of a second, the leopard emerged, not fully into open, but enough to show its shoulder and head. Its coat blended so well with rock and dry grass that if it hadn't moved, it would have been invisible. It held something small in its jaws. A kid goat. The leopard's body was low and controlled, moving with the weightless strength of an animal that didn't waste effort. It didn't run, it simply carried the kid up toward cover. AJ saw it too and went rigid. Verma hissed, "Back!" But the word came too late because the leopard's head turned upward. Its eyes found AJ. For a second, predator and human held each other in a line of sight that felt like a wire pulled tight. The leopard didn't snarl. It didn't charge. It simply assessed. AJ was on a shelf, not on level ground. He was not a threat. He was also close enough to matter. The leopard shifted slightly, stepping into a shadowed notch in the quarry wall and vanishing as if it had never been there. Only the movement of grass remained. AJ backed up so fast he nearly slipped. He caught himself, breathing hard, and scrambled up toward the rim without dignity, because dignity wasn't worth dying for. Verma exhaled slowly, then said to Ramesh in a voice that was controlled but edged with anger, "Someone ignored the warning." Ramesh's jaw clenched. "People are stubborn," he said. "People are careless," Verma corrected. When AJ finally climbed back up, his face was pale, sweat shining on his upper lip. He didn't speak at first because his pride had been scraped raw. Verma didn't shame him. He just said, "Now we know it's active." He turned toward the village and raised his voice so the men who had followed at a distance could hear. "No goats to the quarry," he called. "No dogs loose. Children inside after sunset." Some nodded. Some looked away. Some muttered about government not doing enough. But the message landed where it needed to, in the bodies of the people who had just heard that a goat had been taken in daylight. Ramesh walked back to the village with a new heaviness in his chest. The quarry water had always been their easy answer. Now it was a risk that belonged to everyone. That evening, Ramesh and Sita carried buckets back and forth from the pump. Their shoulders ached. The goats drank greedily, then pressed their heads into corners as if expecting the walls to protect them from a cat they could still smell on the wind. After sunset, the village quieted early. No children ran in the lanes, no radios played loud songs. Men sat in small groups and argued softly, voices kept low as if noise might draw stripes from the dark, even though this predator wore spots. Around midnight, dogs barked once and then fell silent. Ramesh lay awake on his charpay listening to the sound of his own breathing and the distant trickle of the pump tank refilling. He thought about the quarry rim, the leopard's stillness on the ledge, the way it had looked down like a king on a broken throne. He wondered why it had chosen the quarry. Then he remembered what Verma had said without saying. Leopards didn't need much. They needed cover, they needed prey, they needed paths that humans didn't watch well. The quarry offered all of it. A bowl of rock that humans had abandoned, a pond that drew goats and dogs and deer, ledges that made perfect lookout points, scrub that led straight into the village's backyards. The quarry wasn't just a water source, it was an intersection. The next morning, Verma returned with 2 trail cameras and a coil of wire. They positioned the cameras along the quarry rim where the leopard had rested and near the goat trail down into the bowl. Verma chose angles that caught movement without being too obvious, because people stole cameras sometimes, either from mischief or from fear of what they would reveal. He also asked questions nobody liked. "Who grazes near the quarry besides Ramesh?" he asked. Men shifted. Names were dangerous in small villages. Verma waited. Silence didn't move him. Finally, a man spoke, hesitant. "Hari takes goats there sometimes," he said. "Early. He thinks nothing happens in daylight." Verma's eyes hardened. "Tell Hari if he goes again and a child follows, I will personally file charges," he said. The threat wasn't legal poetry. It was the rough language of consequence. They set a simple barrier too, not a fence that could stop a leopard, because nothing like that existed without serious money, but a symbolic barrier across the main goat trail down into the quarry. Wire strung low with cloth strips tied to it, fluttering. It would not stop an animal. It might stop a person long enough to think. Ramesh watched and felt something like gratitude, though it was mixed with frustration. It wasn't that the department didn't care, it was that the situation was bigger than any one response. Animals didn't obey offices. Over the following days, the cameras caught proof. Night footage of the leopard moving along the rim, pausing to look down at the pond, slipping back into scrub. Once, just before dawn, it crossed the trail near the village and vanished behind a row of abandoned stone sheds. Verma came to Ramesh's house and showed him a still image on the small screen. The leopard's body was crisp in infrared, its eyes bright from reflection, not magic. Its tail curved like a question mark. "It's a male," Verma said. "Healthy, not thin." Ramesh stared at the image and felt his throat tighten. "So it will stay," he said. "It may," Verma replied, "or it may move if we make the quarry less profitable." "How?" Ramesh asked, though he already knew. Verma's gaze didn't waver. "Stop bringing goats," he said. "Stop letting dogs roam. Secure waste. Light the lanes at night. Make it harder." Ramesh's lips pressed together. Harder meant effort. Effort meant money. Money meant arguments. That night, the village elders met. They argued about installing a light near the quarry path. They argued about contributing for a larger water tank so goats wouldn't need the quarry pond. They argued about whose responsibility it was, and in the argument you could hear the shape of every village problem. Everyone shared the risk, but nobody wanted to share the cost. In the end, they agreed on small things first, because small things were the only things people could swallow without choking on pride. 2 men volunteered to fix the old streetlight near the quarry turnoff. Another promised to stop leaving slaughter waste behind his shed. Mothers promised, loudly, publicly, that children would not go near the quarry. Promises were easy under daylight. At night, fear tested them. On the 5th night after the first sighting, Ramesh woke to a sound that wasn't barking. It was a goat screaming, not a bleat. A scream, thin, ragged, the sound of panic becoming pain. Ramesh sat up so fast his back cracked. He grabbed the torch and ran outside. The pen was intact. His goats were there, pressed into a corner, eyes wide, bodies trembling. The scream came again, from somewhere down the lane. Ramesh's heart hammered. He shouted for Shankar, for neighbours, for anyone awake, and within moments men emerged with torches and sticks, moving like a cautious pack of their own. They followed the sound to a small courtyard 2 houses down, where a family kept 2 goats tethered outside under a lean-to. The torch beams found one goat down on its side, rope tangled, eyes rolling. The other rope lay snapped. There were tracks in the dust, cat tracks, clear and fresh, leading toward the narrow path that ran behind the houses toward the quarry scrub. The family's father stood shaking, holding a stick like it could undo what had happened. "It took it," he whispered. Verma arrived within an hour, called by phone, his jeep roaring through the quiet. He examined the snapped rope, the tracks, the direction. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He simply said what everyone already knew but hadn't wanted to hear. "It's hunting the village edge now," he said. Ramesh felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Because we stopped the quarry," he said. Verma nodded once. "Because you reduced opportunity there," he replied. "So it tested here." "Then what?" Ramesh demanded. Verma looked toward the dark path that led to the scrub. "Then we stopped giving it easy access here too," he said. "No goats tethered outside at night. Period. If you cannot lock them, you keep watch in groups with light, and if it continues, we consider capture." The word capture moved through the gathered men like wind through dry grass. Hope and fear together. Capture wasn't simple. It meant bait, cage traps, tranquilizers, and the risk of moving a leopard into a crate while angry villagers watched. It meant paperwork. It meant that if the leopard was deemed a problem animal, it might not survive the politics of it. But it also meant the village might sleep again. Over the next week, Verma set a cage trap near the path behind the houses, placing it where the leopard's tracks indicated it passed. He baited it with goat meat, not fresh kills, but legally sourced meat meant to draw the cat's attention without feeding it too much. He positioned the cage so its door faced open ground, because leopards didn't like walking into tight spaces if they couldn't see an exit. Every night, men took turns watching from a distance with torches, their voices low. Ramesh took his turn too, sitting on a rooftop with Shankar beside him, both of them too tired to talk much. The village smelled of smoke and sweat and nervousness. Every rustle in a bush sounded like a paw. On the 9th night, the trapdoor clanged shut just after midnight. The sound was metallic and final, carrying across the lanes. Men ran out of houses, torches flaring. Verma arrived quickly. He had been sleeping in his jeep for 3 nights now because he understood that time mattered. They approached the trap cautiously because trapped cats were still dangerous cats. In the cage, the leopard paced, shoulders rolling, tail flicking. It threw itself once against the bars, then stopped, breathing hard, eyes fixed on the humans with a cold, furious focus. It was beautiful in a way that made people go quiet, the rosettes on its coat like shadows painted on gold, the muscles built for climbing and killing, the calm power even in confinement. AJ prepared the dart rifle. Verma kept the crowd back, barking orders until his voice went hoarse. Ramesh stood behind the line and watched, feeling no triumph, only a deep exhaustion and a strange sadness that sat under it all. The leopard had used the quarry because humans had made it. Humans had left it open, left water there, left paths there. The leopard had done what leopards do, take the easiest advantage. Now humans were doing what humans do, try to control the overlap. AJ darted the leopard cleanly in the shoulder. The cat snarled once, a sharp raw sound that made every man flinch despite himself, then paced faster, then slower, then finally sank to the floor of the cage, breathing deep, eyes heavy. Verma checked reflexes, breathing, and then, with practiced care, they covered the leopard's eyes and secured the cage for transport. As the forest department truck drove away before dawn, carrying the sedated leopard toward a holding facility far from the quarry, the village stood in a hush that felt like a bruise. The goats in Ramesh's pen began to bleat softly, as if the tension had eased enough for their bodies to remember they were alive. When daylight came, Ramesh walked up toward the quarry again, not with goats, just alone, his crook tapping stone. He stood at the rim and looked down at the pond. The water was still there, indifferent. The ledges were still there. The scrub path still led toward the village. The quarry hadn't changed, only the occupant had. Ramesh knew, the way people learn hard truths without anyone saying them, that another leopard could come someday, or a different predator, or the same one could return if it found its way back. The quarry would always be an invitation as long as it stayed an intersection of water, cover, and human habits. He turned away and walked back toward the village, thinking about buckets, fences, lights, and the exhausting work of living beside wild things without pretending the wild would stay politely out of reach. Behind him, the quarry held its rim empty in the sun. And for the first time in days, when Ramesh brought his goats to the trough and poured water in, they stepped forward and drank. Slow at first, then greedily, because the air no longer carried that faint cat smell from above, and the world felt, for a moment, like it belonged to their simple rules again.